Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Michelle, and today I want to finally review Torchlight Level 2 Logic and Legends. It's taken me a while to review this because there's a lot in the Torchlight curriculum, so I had a feeling it would be a lot of different books I would have to show, and I really wanted to get a thorough understanding of the curriculum and using it before I reviewed it. So we are currently on week 24, and this is a 36-week program. So I have a pretty good understanding of what I like and don't like about this curriculum. So I'm going to start with the things I like, because there is a lot of things I really enjoy about Torchlight. The first one is the book selections, the read-alouds suggested in the curriculum is amazing. They're very diverse. They cover a wide range of topics. I've read that some people have issue that a lot of the read-alouds or the books your kids choose to read are kind of heavy and depressing or sad. And I think that's funny that that's the negative review of it, because what I really like about the book selections is they're talking about real issues. There's a book that talks about, Crenshaw talks about homelessness in a family. There's books that talk about racial diversity and how that can be difficult being not a white person. And the topics can be heavy, and what I really actually enjoy is that my 8-year-old, which I specifically use with her, also my 5-year-old joins us a lot with it, is she wants to talk about real topics. She doesn't want to talk about make-believe, or she's definitely getting into that area in life where things are more interesting that are real. So I appreciate that these books not only have diverse characters, but are talking about diverse things. We've talked about, like I said, about many different cultures and ethnic backgrounds, and it's just really been eye-opening, and all but one of the read-alouds my kids have loved, and the only one they did not like was Turtle Omen, and there was nothing wrong with the story. It definitely gave a good background into the character and everything. It just, the entire story was about this boy preparing to move across to another country, and the entire book he talks about it, but by the end of the book he never actually moves. I mean, he moves, says he's moving in the book, but my kids were disappointed that they never got to see the other part of that story, like what happens after he moves. But other than that, we have loved all of the read-aloud suggested books in here. What I really like is that because they were newer titles, it was not difficult to get these books at all. I said we're on week 24, so I've been able to get every single book at our local library. And if you didn't know, most library programs participate in an interlibrary loan program. So if your library near you or the surrounding libraries don't have a book, they will request a book from a farther away library at no cost to you, and it will be delivered to your library to pick up. I've done that, I think, 3-4 times with our local library to get specific books or supplements that my library or the library system that my library works within didn't have. So I have no issue getting any of the books. And I've never bought any of the books, so that's really nice. That's a cost savings, because if you look at how many books is suggested and different things like spines that you'll use a lot, again, it's not as necessary. So the book selection's awesome. The other thing I really liked is the logic it creates. There's different topics that the curriculum covers, and one of them is logic. What I really like about these Truth, Truths, and Lie is they're just stories, real story. Well, two, obviously, as the title tells. 2 of them are true, 1 of them is lie. So each chapter goes through a different thing. You read through the different chapters. Torchlight provides a really nice investigation log where you learn how to look up reliable resources, what you should look for while reading the text. And I think this is crucial, especially now when the majority of people get their news and information from Facebook. You need to be able to understand what a reliable source is and what to look for while reading a text. So I think this is very important, and I love that this starts at such a young age too. So these were really good. The only negative I have about this is, which is an overall negative to Torchlight, is the schedule is too much. They lay out a schedule for you. You get a weekly schedule, and then you get a daily schedule. If you want to see how I specifically lay this out in our homeschool, I do have a couple planning videos, I'll link up above, about what we use and what we don't use and how I work around it. But this is really nice, but it's time consuming. And with all the things Torchlight gives you, you don't necessarily always have the time to go through each chapter, fill out a log. So sometimes we'll just read the chapter and discuss which one they think is real, which one's not. We'll look up a couple things if we have time. It is more time consuming is the only negative I have. So one is just about living things and the other one is about history. But I really recommend these if you're just looking for reading, really good. Another thing I like about Torchlight that does really well is there's a lot of links within the curriculum itself. So YouTube links, different museum links, things that help supplement what you're teaching. Now, the main reason I chose this level in Torchlight, besides the reading selection, is we are spending an entire year talking about medieval history. That's our main history curriculum. But it's not just the history of Europe, which most people are taught, at least here in the United States, is history around the world. So it's a global perspective, which I really appreciate. But it provides all these extra supplements for you to use. So it's like having year-long unit study, but not in a boring way, like, oh my God, we're still doing this, but really keeps it engaging with new, different activities to do that you don't yourself have to organize and look up and figure out how you're gonna connect this to this, because a lot of time the read-aloud book will connect to what you're reading in history, and the activities will connect to what you're reading in that. So it's all very well interconnected resources and different activities you'll be doing every week, which I really like. Another thing we have really enjoyed is the pantomime poetry. Pantomime poetry is memorizing poems by coming up with actions and acting it out. My kids have absolutely loved it. And I gotta say, this Be Glad Your Nose is on Your Face is a wonderful poetry book. The illustrations are great, and my kids have really enjoyed all of the poems. Sometimes they just like to look at the pictures too. So that is a great part of the curriculum that I really enjoyed. Another part I really enjoyed is the history suggestion they give for it. The history suggestion is Curiosity Chronicles, and we're specifically doing medieval history. And when I picked that up, I also picked up the instructor's guide, which is pretty much just gives you an outline of what the chapter's about. It gives you discussion, comprehensive question. It gives you just discussion questions in general. And then extra reading if you want to look further into a topic. And then there's a list for hands-on activities. And even if you want, there's a Minecraft activity for every chapter too. My daughter's personally not into Minecraft, so we've never done that. But the suggested activities are never overly complicated. It's usually something simple like creating a game or something to just immerse yourself more in what you're learning. So I really like that. And what I really love about the history curriculum especially is that it's a global perspective. You're not just learning American history, you're not just learning as we're reading medieval times, not what just happened in Europe, which is what my public school education was, just specifically focusing on one thing. So you're getting a perspective of what's going on during this time period from around the world. It's also secular, which I prefer with my curriculum. I like that it is the first time I've encountered a history curriculum that appropriately addresses things like religion and varying perspectives and how those can influence the history that is being written. I think the book has really nice graphics. It's done in a dialogue format, so we do the audiobook of this actually. So it's between Mona and Ted, and they just talk back and forth, which works great for some kids, and I could see how it wouldn't work great for others. My kids really like it. It's engaging. They understand it better having it presented in that way opposed to just me reading a textbook to them. My one concern with that is the audiobook the voice actor that does Mona does talk a little fast. Ted does an awesome job. You can totally get what he's saying, but sometimes the voice actor for this does talk a little fast. And the chapters are about 15 to, I say, 18 minutes long in the audiobook, so it is a longer read. So, and again, Torchlight wants you to get through one of these chapters every week, which is completely doable, and we do it. But I could see, especially if you have younger, like my daughter, 7, 8 years old, you would maybe want to extend those chapters because it is a lot of information compacted into a chapter. But what I really like is that it's historically accurate. It's pulling from resources with historical background. It's not just put in one way, whitewashed or hero perspective. It's a global perspective. You get more than one person's point of view when you're reading about this history. So I really have enjoyed this. This is something we will definitely continue. One thing I like that includes in the actual curriculum itself is the lit primers. So for every read aloud book it has a summary of what the book is about. It also has discussion questions for each chapter or each section that you're assigned to read. I'll show you a quick example of that. So this is a lit primer. So it will also, what I really like, tell you any possible concerns. So we just read the Unusual Chicken Poultry Farmer book. Really good. But it did have some scenes where a chicken was killed in the process. So it was on there as a possible concern. If religion is brought up, it is brought up as a possible concern. So not reading the book beforehand, I do have a more sensitive child, so knowing ahead of time that I will be talking about that and being able to kind of figure out how we're going to address it is really helpful. But again, it gives you the chapters and discussion questions, and my kids have really enjoyed it, and it makes it easy for me as a teacher facilitating it to actually go through and ask the questions and bring up those discussions. I really like, and as I showed you there, the book schedule it gives out. I like that it's scheduled out. Everything is scheduled out for you. But I also don't like it at the same time, which makes sense because the schedule is too much, which is one of my negatives. It's too much to do for 1 week. I can't imagine having kids on multiple levels. But so for example, I do like that it schedules out the readings. We always follow the reading schedule for the read-alouds. The same with the poetry and all that. But they give you way too many options, I think. I think it's one of those things you can't do it all. So you definitely pick and choose, and that is what we do. We pick and choose the things we're going to use. I know a lot of people complain that it's too much. You don't have to do it all. It's your choice. So I do like that it is scheduled out, and there's even daily schedules if you want to kind of help figure out how to divide it up, but again, make it how you need to be. I do like that it is very structured and gives me a basic outline of how our week is going, how our year is going to go, a very broad stroked outline, and it can be as detailed as you want because again, it will tell you what to do every single day. But that doesn't always work for everyone's schedule, which goes to what I haven't really enjoyed about Torchlight. Like I've mentioned before, the schedule's too much. They put way too many things in there that it stresses you out more because you feel like you're not doing it all. So I would encourage you to look at the curriculum as, what do I want to use? Not, I have to use everything. Pull the things that will be interesting or that you would like. So for example, I really like the 2 truths and a lie logic, but sometimes we just don't have time for it. So we don't do it that week. Same with one thing, there's things in here we do not use. So for example, I do not use the vocabulary spell book. It's kind of like you find words within your reading and fill out a dictionary page. That to me is busy work. There is busy work in here that I don't think is necessary. For example, the geography I don't think is helpful provided in this curriculum. I think it's just busy work, something for your kid to do. And that's not how I want to spend our time. If we're going to be doing something, I want there to be a purpose to it. So those are, for example, 2 things we do not do. The other thing I do not really like is it says it includes music and art, but I don't think I would call it that. The art it includes are more craft projects, not necessarily any type of art instruction. So for example, for music, you listen to various artists' music and you read books like this, Lives of the Musicians, and I believe this is one of the spines, one of the ones you should have. And there's a music or a orchestra one as well. And it gives just a little summary of the musician, and then you listen to some of their music. And I think that's great, but honestly, I don't think it's really done my kids much. We actually stopped doing it because after going through this, it didn't seem like they were really retaining any of the information. I think it would have been better use of our time to pick a specific musician or instrument and study that more deeply. And it could be just my kids. You know, there are people that prefer the Charlotte Mason where you get little tidbits here and there. My kids aren't like that. They prefer to go deeper on things. So the little read a biography, listen to their music every couple weeks just wasn't enough for us. I don't think it really helps, and I don't think they really remembered most of it. So it was one of those things that just didn't end up working well for us. Same with art. The art was just mostly craft projects that they do coincide with what you're learning about that week, but again, it's not really art form or anything like that. It's just a extra project to do. One thing I did not like was that with the book list, there are things that can be out of print. For example, the grammar book they suggested, the No Nonsense Guide to Grammar, is completely out of print. You're not going to find it. There are easy ways to replace things, and there's even a thing in the curriculum that says if you can't find it, this would be a suitable replacement, so I appreciate that. But again, they didn't have that grammar book, so I just replaced it with that. The writing assignments, there are occasional writing assignments within the curriculum, which again, they tie into what you're doing that week and what you're learning about, but it's one of the you're getting a little piece of something, nothing in depth. So for example, these are some of the books suggested, and I think this one might even be one of the spines, the ones you're supposed to have that you're going to be accessing a lot. And it's a great book, and it talks about writing your own fairy tale, writing your own letters, and it goes through in story format, tells you how these things are set up, and in the curriculum you write things like you write your own letter and everything like that. But again, it's nothing in depth, and I don't think it gives you a much to do. Like, you'll write the letter, you'll write the poem, but I don't think it's necessarily the best use of our time. It's not deep enough, if that makes sense, to really stick. And then another thing is the spine books it suggests I really don't think are necessary. So for example, a couple of them we have is A Child Through Time. I think this is a wonderful book to have in general, but again, sometimes the curriculum will just have you pull out a specific section and read about how that child lived. And sometimes it works really well, but sometimes it just doesn't really fit well. And I think it's a good book to have on the end, but I wouldn't think it's a requirement, a book you have to have that really helps convey the information so much better. So another spine that I don't think is really necessary is the When on Earth. I think we've only opened this a couple of times, and it was nice when we had time to read about the section we did have, but it didn't really add that much to it, especially since I think it's like a $15 to $20 book new. It wouldn't be worth it if your local library had it. That's great, but other than that, it just was an extra thing to do. Same with this one, City Through Time. I, in the beginning, purchased a lot of the spine books ahead of time, either through thrift books or sometimes Amazon. And again, it's a wonderful idea, and it's great to be able to pull from these resources, but when you're going through all these different things, like day one, do, it feels like something extra added. It's not really adding enough value to be doing it. So there are a few of the books I really did enjoy, the supplemental books. I think this is one of the spines. This was actually a lot of fun, the different projects, and I think you go through this a couple different times. So for one of the examples is we made a medieval feast. So it came with recipes and instructions how to decorate your dining hall, and it was a lot of fun, and they got to perform, and they each played a different role at dinner. Like, someone was a lord, somebody was a servant, you can guess who was who in that scenario. But it was really fun. There was a chain link exercise where we learned how the knight's armor was originally put together, and we made little chain links, and my daughter had so much fun with that. She still actually does that. There are a lot of fun activities in here that go really well with what you're learning about, so I really did like that. Same with this one. Again, I don't think these books are necessarily, you need to have them to do the curriculum. They just add a little bit to it. And sometimes it's worth it in these books, and sometimes it's just something extra to do. So I really like The Archer's Alchemist and 98 Other Medieval Jobs. It goes through different medieval jobs. It's a little snippet. Again, when you read the curriculum and it tells you when to do it, you're reading a lot of these pages at once, and it just wasn't really sticking. When you're talking about 10, 15 different jobs in one span of reading, it's a little overwhelming. And I don't think your kids really retain a lot then, but it's really interesting information. So again, my biggest suggestion would be to poll what you want to do or what you think will be helpful. One thing I did really enjoy were the logic games it suggested. Now again, with the out of print, it's hit or miss, because one of the games, Witch Kitty or something like that, isn't sold anymore, isn't made. And there are alternatives suggested. Cat Crimes is the alternative. It's a Who's to Blame logic game. It's actually really fun. But again, the curriculum has you doing this for an entire week, multiple times during the year, and the kids kind of get a little bored with it. So for example, I'm not sure if this was suggested, but I picked this one up, Logic Land. I think it is one of the suggested ones. And it's a really fun logic game, but again, it has you playing this multiple times, and there are different levels in this, but it can get a little boring halfway through the year when you've played the game a lot. One thing that was not suggested in the curriculum that I really liked was Sleeping Queens. Again, it's a kind of logic role-playing game. My kids have really enjoyed that. So overall, I have really enjoyed the Torchlight curriculum. I will continue to finish the year out with this curriculum. I really liked a lot of the things, but again, the main problem I see is the scheduling. It's just too much. There's no way everybody can get through that and not feel frazzled or like you're trying to check off a list. My suggestion would be to figure out what parts of you want to do. For example, we don't do any of the science suggested in there. I believe they use Real Science Odyssey, and there's nothing wrong with that science curriculum. It just wasn't gonna work for us, mainly because we already learned about earth science last year, and that was the main topic this year. But more to that, it was more in depth that I wanted to go to this year, so I just crossed it out. And guess what? You can do that. You can cross out the things you're not going to use. That's why I highly suggest you don't get all the books right away and all the read-alouds. And I mean, it's fine to look at your local library, see if they carry those things to get kind of an idea if you would have to purchase things, but don't go out and buy all the spines. And another thing I would not do is don't necessarily print it right away. I did not print all of it because I use my at-home printer. I'm really glad I didn't try to get it printed or bound, because there's a lot of things like the science, the geography, we don't even use. I don't even print out the everyday, because there's a separate sheet for every single day of what you're supposed to be doing. I just print the week out and I cross out, and then I decide what I'm gonna do from there. And if there's any links, then I'll go to my computer and bring up the links. But don't waste your money printing it out right away, because one, you may not use everything. Two, you might find it's too overwhelming and you have to tweak it. So I would really just start out with it on a computer or printing out the outlines like that, instead of going all in right away. But like I said, I really enjoy it. I will continue to use it, but there are some tweaks that I think you would have to be doing as a homeschool educator. But that is my review. If you have any specific questions about Torchlight Level 2, leave them down below, but thanks for watching.